one of the things that gospel that's different hasn't respected is the destruction of Satan. That is why Paul says, I am marveled that you are following a different gospel. Because in the different gospel, the devil is alive. He's standing. In the gospel of Paul, the devil is what? Destroyed. In the gospel that's different that Paul speaks about, sin is standing. In the gospel of Paul, sin was removed. It is to say the difference when Paul says a different gospel, it's because it's very different. That is very different. You know what it is, a gospel without the devil and sin, and one gospel with devil and sin. It's a difference from heaven and earth. The prosperity of the believer in the different gospel, poverty is the fruit of holiness. In the gospel of Paul, wealth is fruit of holiness. Prosperity. Listen how God blesses him. Look how the angels assist him. But that is in Paul's gospel. That is why Paul says, you already know the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, that he being rich became poor so he can, through his poverty, enrich us. This is to say, wherever you talk about grace, you have to talk of wealth. It says, you know the grace of God. How many know the grace of God? Well, then you have to speak of riches. You can't speak about poverty. Only in the false gospel, they speak of poverty and they applaud it. That is why here we receive so much wealth. With 300 members here, there is more than what comes into a congregation of 3,000. Don't you see that they have a false gospel? And the false gospel makes them greedy. And a false gospel doesn't work with greed. It does nothing for the flesh. It makes them cheaper than ever. What they give is change. Yes. Yes. Listen, when a church prospers, it's because the people are prosperous. Don't you think? And another thing that in the Gospel of Paul, Paul says, leaving the rudiments of the doctrine of Christ. Now, in the different gospel that Paul rebuked that the 11 apostles preach is to retain, to sustain the rudiments of the doctrine of Jesus. In Paul's, it's leaving. In though that of the apostles, it was to retain. Therefore, I today would like to make emphasis in that you sustain yourself in the gospel that Paul preached. If this confuses you or someone that's watching via internet, know that we are of those that are with Paul, and we are not in agreement with the different gospels the apostles preach of those days. This ministry represents in its entirety the gospel that Paul preached. Our identity is with that apostle. For the first time on the face of the earth, they've honored the ministry of that man that said, I honor my ministry. I go with the Gentiles, and he was never accepted till today.